Hey everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. Happy Saturday. Looking at Curt's Homelite 360 here. This came apparently from a local auction. He was able to get it running, but he said it just never seemed quite right. So that's pretty vague. He said it was hard to start. That gives me a little bit to go on. But I don't have a real good history of the saw, so I don't know what we're going to be tackling here. But what I do know is the easiest way to find out to dig in it and see what comes up. So just initially, I've looked at it a tiny bit. The caps are crusted with sawdust, which makes me think they've probably been leaking, so we'll need to do duckbill valves. Good compression. I cannot complain about that at all. So that's a good sign. Alright, I see some semi-fresh Tygon here. It started to stiffen up, which again isn't the most surprising thing. Actually, I don't know that it's Tygon brand. I know that it's yellow hose, yellowish green. Could be some of the stuff I sent. The impulse hose is original. What's visible of this carburetor diaphragm is pretty limber, so I'm gonna guess the carb's been rebuilt. Let's see what we've got on the business end here. That's gotten stiff. Wow, really stiff. Good looking fuel filter though. Looks like a new fuel filter. Alright. Well, that's interesting. What the hell's going on there? This throttle's not opening all the way. Is that throttle rod? Something. The throttle rod's bent. Before I mess with that, let me bumble the camera around a little bit here and see if I can get you guys to where you can kind of see what I'm seeing. And forgive me, this will be terrible quality video in terms of shakiness and all of that, but I can't see what I'm working on. Alright. I'm trying to catch this in the viewfinder. I hope that's showing up. See how that throttle is barely moving? That's bottomed out right there. So, I'm thinking that at some point when the carburetor came off, this linkage is a pain in the ass. That's all you can say for these, but it looks like it's been bent. And the throttle trigger isn't even retracting. Oh yeah, she's bent. God, I hate to take that apart. Although I did have a request for a throttle linkage video. Not that I was hoping to be able to accommodate that this quickly. Yeah, boy, that's hanging up bad. But I can't tell if it's in the carburetor that it's hanging up or in the throttle handle. That's mildly irritating. One easy way to find, well, relatively easy way to find out. Ooh, those are loose. That could have potentially been enough to create an air leak. And that impulse line is not in terrible shape. Now what I'm not confident in is my ability to get that fuel hose off and on without causing a problem here. Okay. Alright, so you'll see what I mean here. You have to rotate this carb, and you can see how the linkages are starting to give it up, but it's still not. Man, something's. There we go. You got to get the lower to slip off too. Ah, there's a big notch. No, there isn't. Let's see. Alright, that was our test. See, that's returning without any trouble whatsoever, so any potential problem is in the throttle trigger itself. But I don't know. I don't know what is dragging. And it could be this trigger is worn out, it could be this handle grip. Those are tough. I'm going to try the first method that's always helped, and that's get a little lubrication in there. And that was more than a little, that was a lot. See if we can get that. That is just, that is awful rough. Well, that sucks. Alright, I gotta back you guys up a little bit for this. Need a little room to work. Get this back where I can see. Alright. So, this is probably not a terrible video to be doing. Again, I've had a request for the inner workings of one of these. So what the hell, let's do it. I'm only flipping it like this because it'll be a lot easier to get this handle off. We've got to get the throttle handle plate out here. And there's some pretty good buildup of trash here. Take the time to scrape that out or you'll end up rounding the heads of your screws off. Okay. Oof, this is pretty coated in junk. So it won't fall out. We're going to go ahead and pull this muffler heat shield off too. So that attaches right underneath the throttle handle plate. And you can see all that buildup of crap. We're going to clean that up, you know. I don't know what situation it would take to get it hot enough to actually try and ignite this, but I also don't want to know. Alright, now the less fun part of this will start. And that is attempting to get this rubber grip off without destroying what's left of it. They glued them in place. I don't think they needed to. You need the longest, thinnest screwdriver you got. Make sure I'm still in frame there. And yep. You start working it loose while attempting not to punch through the side. You can use an all dental pick, you know, something like this, but that is even more risky that you're going to make a mess. Alright, you can see that whole side's moving there. So let's switch over to this other side. I don't know if the camera will pick that up, but you could hear some of that glue releasing there. We'll attempt to do one across the top. Okay, not so bad. Not so bad at all. You also have got to get this, if it's not already, see that all looks pretty loose. see if we can do this with that choke rod in place. This is a later style. I think that's just a snappy and fit. HI. Late 80s? Yeah, that'd be somewhere 87, 86, 88, somewhere in there. Alright, so it's sort of loose. See how I'm twisting that? I want to see a little more movement. But you basically have got to try and work it over all of these levers here without destroying it too bad. So you want to get the bottom to start over the throttle trigger with the trigger in the release position there. Start working it back. God, I don't know what. I think one of those pins was coming out. Yeah, I'm not convinced that it isn't still. It's either that or something's hung up. And these throttle handles, these grips don't survive all that well after all this time. But we're going to do our best. Oh, okay, there we go. Saw that movement. Now you got to try and work it over this fast idle trigger. You've gone a little too far. Now we know it's loose. See what I'm doing there? And I don't think it's going to work as nicely as I want it to. There's a little flapper left there. Get that the hell out of the way. Now it's going to tear. Okay. Now when you get to this point, you're 99% there, but now underneath it's hanging up again. Oh, come on, you. Pissing me off. You see, we got the same situation. We got to pop this up over the throttle trigger if we can. When new rubber grips were readily available, I guarantee you a shop would have just cut this and had it off. Alright, see how it's slipping over? We might get lucky here and preserve that. Huh! Look at that! Nice. Perfect. Not a chance in hell. I don't know why that was bulged out like that. Huh. Anyway, there it is. So that's off. Get this straightened up. You see there's just 3 pins that holds everything in place. If you haven't downloaded a copy of the IPL that matches your saw, and you're at this point in the project, you better stop and go get that IPL so that you have any chance in hell of putting this back together. Now, I want to... Alright, now see that? There's no catch whatsoever now. But there's an awful lot of slop in that trigger. And I'm not convinced that it doesn't have a ton of wear in it. That tells me it was probably catching on this damn handle grip somewhere. Once you've checked your carburetor, that should be the next thing that you check. Just make sure this grip isn't jamming something up. Because that is smooth. Like I say, it does have a lot of wear. I'm game to pop one of these pins out for now. I've replaced all of this stuff in the past, but let me tell you, it isn't any fun. even when you know what it should be doing, it still sucks. Oh yeah, forgot to tell you, there's a square nut. Slides up in the handle here for that screw. When it falls out, save it. And if you're really smart, remember it before it falls out. Obviously, I don't qualify under the really smart category. Alright. So those index together. So you saw how I was able to get it to go forward, clear, and lift the safety trigger out. The spring-loaded piece for it is still in there, and I am not taking that out. It has its own spring. The diagram shows it. There's a little tang right there the spring rests against. If you had to replace that for some reason, you just drive that pin, get everything set, drive the pin back in. But again, I'm not going to go to extra trouble that I don't have to. Now the trigger, you can see how I've just kind of worked it out. This rod fits in pretty good and tight. It is meant not to come out. There we go. Now that I got that down there so far, I mean, this really doesn't look that bad, but it was definitely bent because it wouldn't retract all the way. But what I want to look at okay. Alright, so that play is pretty inherent to it. Where is... looks like the vast... yeah, the vast majority of the wear is actually in the safety trigger. Good news, I have those. A lot of them. If this doesn't significantly improve, Curt's going to get a new one at no charge. But we're looking at this from a let's figure it out point of view. Oh man. Hold on, let me get that pin. It's not perfect, but that is much better. That's going to hold that much more consistently where it needs to. So, I'm going to pause this. I need to go get, if I have one, a new old stock rod. We'll try and bend this one back into shape using that one as a pattern. I'll be right back. God, I love it when I have new old stock parts. So recall, I've already bent this some. I probably didn't get that on camera real well. There's what it should look like. So I got close. But you can tell this thing's been monkeyed with a couple times. Like I say, the contortion you got to go to get it out is a pain in the ass. So I'm going to go ahead and get a sharper angle back on this. It's pretty spot on right there. A little bit of a belly in it. Right in the middle there. Let's see if that got it. Look at that. I think I can live with that. So new old stock part will go in my pocket and go back into the package. Perfectly good used part is going to go back on this thing. Now, because this fits into this trigger so tight, reassemble that right there. Only one way that can go. We'll snake it back up through here. That is in its spot. Get our new throttle safety lever. Get it so that tang is underneath. Those two are nested together. And now, oh, where are you? You little shit. Like I said, this isn't fun by any stretch of the imagination. Working with this, because you've got to get this to maybe compress back just a smidge to make your life a little easier. And as you can tell, it doesn't like doing that. Ooh, there. Yes. The trick is keeping enough tension on everything that you get this damn pin started. There she goes. See, there's not a lot of tension on that pin. You don't have to get carried away with it. Part of why that rubber grip's there. Alright. So that is free. As that pulls away, that'll pop back up. I don't have any binding. What do you say we give it a shot? But I'll be damned if I'm putting that rubber cover back on just yet. I want to have this actually work. It's always easiest to not have the fuel lines on. Fuel and impulse line. Alright, so that's why it was bent. See how much of a pain in the ass this is? I mean, once you've done it a couple times, you get used to it. It's not a big deal. What I like to do is try to hold that stinking choke rod out of the way. You can push it forward if that helps. But when you do that, you see it drops below your throttle. Alright, so there's the throttle. Oh guys, how about I not be smart, or not be stupid and put it on the right side? Thought that went too easy. You got to open the throttle on the carb with your thumb over here, get it past that adjustment needle. And when you get to about that point, you can start working on your choke rod. And that's where having it that close sucks. So you retract it some. But you're half as likely to lose your throttle when you do that. Now I can feel that it's still there. So the trick, you see how it's in, and we've started up here. When you get to this point, you're home free. Because all you got to do is twist it around and get your damn fuel hose out from underneath it. Get this to index in. See that? Now you notice I left this grommet in place. That helps align you back where you want to be to bolt your carb down. But I moved it just a smidge, so I'm looking down through there. Now it's critical you don't get crazy with these and make sure that they thread appropriately, because it's just pot metal down there and it will strip. It's one of these. It's pot metal with threads right there, and those will strip real fast if you do something bad. Now I felt them start. Okay. I know from experience that'll work. Alright. Choke, fully operational. Throttle, fully operational. It's snapping back to its idle stop. I can see that the plate's wide open. That is what we wanted. And there's much less, there's still some slop in that trigger that's inherent, but this was definitely worn on the inside here. So there we are. Now, what could that have possibly had to do with the hard starting? Well, these things like to have, I'm in the throttle latch position there. You could fit that blade between the wall of the carburetor and the throttle plate. They like to have some throttle as they're starting. Some saws you can get away with not having a throttle lock at all. The way that linkage was all bent up, that throttle lock wasn't working, so it was being started on just pure idle. And I'll be damned if I know why, but this low speed screw is completely out of the carburetor. I can't begin to tell you what the heck that's all about. There's no way it would even run like that, but that's what I want to do next, is attempt to run this thing. Good Lord, what the hell? I don't get this. I don't get that at all. Anyway, I want to try to run it, see if it'll start. So we're going to go back to... That's not quite a turn and a half open. On these things, they don't usually need it. Now the high was barely 3/4 open, so I'm going to go a little further. Move you guys back again. That's the thing, when I start moving this camera around the bench, all my little hidey holes where it fits all of a sudden go away. Nah. Oh, goodness. Alright, that'll work. Let's put a little fuel in this thing. Quit the bumbling around. The way the saw is designed with 4 anti-vibe mounts on the throttle handle, I don't feel bad about starting it without that lower brace in place. If those mounts were all blown out, in theory you could damage your carb boot, but for the little bit that we're doing right here, I think I'm going to feel okay about it. Deal with those cap vents later if they need it, which I'm going to guess they do. Alright, I will start this per the instructions in Homelite's manual. Set the throttle lock, choke. Let's see what happens here. She's tried to pull fuel. That's a decent sign. Say the starter needs serviced in a bad way. Wrong size rope. Or at least swollen. Took longer than I wanted it to, but let's see what happens. We go no further. One more time. I'm virtually certain that intake boot's blown out. But one more time. She's either starving for fuel or that intake boot's blown out. As crumbed up as the rest of the saw is, I'm going to vote intake boot blown. That's okay, we made some progress. I guess to finish up the throttle side of it, let's put this back on, and all I'm doing is compressing the triggers, stretching everything over. Oh, shit. Ha! Don't forget that square nut. And that's why you got to turn this thing to one side. Oiler works. So you're already puking oil there. Where'd you go? There you are. Okay, so slip that back in that notch. If you're really so inclined, you can put something in there to hold it. But then you have to make sure it doesn't do what that one just did and try and slap through the wrong way. Now, if you've been lucky enough to get this off without tearing it to this point, you've got decent odds of getting it back in place without a bad thing happening. I'm so close. Sweet. That worked well. Get it tight. Full throttle operations. We did that. So there it is. That's good. The rest of this is academic. And by that I mean, for me, I've done this enough damn times that... Ooh. Gotta do some carburetor work while it's out too. So remember, after you've done that, loosen your fuel cap, or when you pull this off again, it's going to be pressurized and squirt all over you. Alright, let's get our carburetor back out of the way. That's the one downside. I wanted to know that throttle linkage worked, and you know it did. But now you get to undo the work. But good practice. For a less than fun. God, that stiff old hose is just pissing me off. This right here is how those get bent. Normally that doesn't slip off that easy. But it did, so whatever. Come on. There she goes. You almost need 3 hands for that. Oh yeah. I thought that boot looked a little funny. That's why it took so long to start too. Alright. Getting this apart is pretty damn easy. I'm pretty sure I've got videos up there before. But I won't swear to it. You got 4 AV mounts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Starter doesn't even have to come off for this. Alright. Factory put Loctite on these. That's why I was being a little bit gentle. It's uncommon to break these, but I've certainly seen it where it's snapped right there. You can usually still get it apart without too much trouble, but if by accident part of the thread snapped in there, you'd be screwed. That would be zero fun to deal with that. Alright, now don't just start yarding. Remember I told you about that cast intake piece that's down in there. Gotta get these two screws out so it will hang. Now, we'll be able to get that bad boy apart. Now, if you still have a bucking spike on, you should take it off too, because the tank will hit the mounting screws. Okay, I'm sliding it forward, and then you come to your oil hose that you got to pull loose. Okay, normally I can do that by hand. This one is, there we go. And of course this will give us an opportunity to clean all this up. Now if you got much oil in there, it'll puke, even sitting like this. I'm going to go ahead and take this out. Easier to clean the mess up out there. Alright. So now we're down to it. Alright. Watch what happens here. That's your impulse hose. That's the intake boot. Should be secured under there and attached right here. It's amazing it would even start like that. So the best advice I can give you guys is if you have a 360 and you know nothing about it, just do this. Just do it. Even if it hasn't broken yet, if it's the original, it's gonna. It is going to break. I can't phrase it any other way. It will break. The rubber just isn't stable. And I mean, who can blame it? If this is a 1987 or 88 saw, like I see that range, how old does that make it? Nearly 35 years old, somewhere getting close. You can't really blame rubber for failing at that point. So, it is what it is. So that, to me, we've got this just damn near solved. We'll go through that carb while it's apart. That just makes sense. But right now it's cleanup time. And even though I said, hey, you don't have to take the starter off, I need to clean this. You know, you saw all the sawdust and crap that was attached to the tank. It'd be dumb not to go ahead and just clean this thing out right. So I'm going to shut this down, get everything cleaned up, and then we'll come back for some reassembly. And I may check that carb off cam too. I got a million HTC carb videos out there. You guys can find all of that. So I'll come back when it's time to reassemble, and hopefully we'll do the proper test run. Alright. So now I left some of this stuff for cleanup because I want you guys to see it. So that plate was screwed down there. You can see what's left of the garter spring. It's probably still safe to reuse. But you got to pry it loose from the old debris so that you can stretch it over the intake. There we go. Yeah, that's easy enough to use. Okay. So that's what's left of the sealing edge of the old intake boot there. So we get all that trash off. This one's not nearly as gooey as some. If it's in the first stages of the decay, where it's still black goo about like a nasty diaper, and you have more fun. This stuff that you can scrape primarily without staining yourself and everything else is good. Most of the time this intake gasket stays just like that, stuck to the intake. Do not scrape that off and replace it at that point. There is nothing wrong with it, and it's not going to leak. Somebody got a little carried away with the silicone last installation there. So this will only go one way. Get it right, or you'll have a massive air leak. Okay, clean up this, you want to pry your bushing and gasket out. Now the gasket must still be stuck to the bottom of the carb. It is equally. Don't cut that off and replace it if you don't have to. That's not going to leak. It will be fine. See, we're getting lucky. I've had these where they're just gooed beyond all belief. We'll see if our luck holds. Oh yes. Hey, hey, hey. That's living good in the neighborhood, folks. Okay. Bye-bye. So putting this back together is the exact opposite of taking it apart. We got to get the boot on. I'm going to keep that hose. It is in good shape. And on impulse hoses, those stay pliable longer than the yellow line does. I haven't had a problem with it, but at the same time, there is no reason to replace that. Leave my driver. Okay. You don't want to get crazy with these either. But it's essential that those come out. In theory, you could do this process by just peeling all that crap off and never remove this, but you'd miss your opportunity to clean up all the sawdust and crap that's down there. And if you're going to this much trouble, do not miss that opportunity. Alright. Make sure your tool is clean, and you're just going to stretch this over. And if you have a lot of trouble with that, you probably should take the time to warm that boot up a little bit. I've tried every version of this, trying to slip this on first, and it doesn't work. This is far and away the easiest way. Pick a point, hold it, work it around, slip it down past those screws ever so nicely, and look at that. Done. Now this is super easy to get backwards. I can't tell you how many times I have done that. And it's super annoying to figure it out as you're getting it back together. Remember that this needs to fit up into the throttle handle. So you want it facing up like that. Directionally, if you forget what you're doing, this side is where this hose slips through. So that's going to determine your clock position. I need to put a little bit of an angle on that tip. And there's plenty of extra, so it's not going to hurt anything. There we go. And then that's going to end up setting your clock position. Your carburetor screws should be basically perpendicular to the flywheel, and then securing to the throttle handle are an angle like that. So the boot's got to come up through here. So do exactly what you did on the other end and carefully get it up through here. And all of a sudden, boom shakalaka, there it is. Grab the throttle handle. that's well timed. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, given the serial number, I'm impressed that there's a metal barb here. A lot of these were plastic. Maybe they had enough of trouble that they switched back to metal. But this is a great time to check that. If you got a plastic barb that looks like that right there, if there's any cracks around it, take the time to either replace this with something that'll fit, or put a bunch of JB weld around it and seal it up. That'll fix it. But if you don't do that on a plastic one that's cracked, what you're going to get, the oil pump's working, but it's sucking air right there instead of oil out of the tank. So when you do a bench test, you'll see bubbles, but it'll never fully prime. Alright, getting this back together is the exact opposite of taking it apart. Get your hose hooked up first. And then start working it into place. Now, if you're putting new bushings in, you may have to take a screwdriver and compress them a little bit to get it to start. These have been in here long enough that they don't require a lot of effort. You see I'm fishing the impulse hose back over here. It goes out the back, and if you forget that and get everything dropped in, you're like, aw, poo, I get to do it again. So anyway, again, since this has been used, those slipped in real nice and easy. No trouble whatsoever. Now we're going to go ahead and secure those. Even though the factory used Loctite on these, I find that there's enough residual I don't need to add anymore. I've never had a 360 rattle one of these out. I know why they would put Loctite. I mean, if those pins rattled out, I mean, your saw is going to drop out from under you. So that's a bad thing. But, and actually, now that I say that, it really wouldn't, because your handle would retain it, but it would be an unwieldy, awkward mess that would probably scare the heck out of you. Good enough. Okay. Oh man, I forgot to go through that carb. What we're going to do on this is we're going to pressure test it. I thought I saw a fuel leak, but I will verify that. I was so excited to get this thing back together and see it run. I forgot that I told you guys I'd go through that off camera. Oh, there it just popped. Okay. Wow. And there she goes. Wow. Okay. Let's see why she's leaking. Let me blow this off with a little air. Well, that went well. I say, it's nice and pliable out here, but that doesn't mean under the cover it is. Because what's outside has never been exposed to fuel. Come on, baby. Ah, you want to be an irritant, do you? There we go. Oh, that inlet needle's too high. That arm. See how it's sticking up a little bit above the deck? Just a smidge high. And, oh boy, I come across this a lot. Diaphragm and gasket are reversed. See that? Diaphragm should be on top of that gasket. I don't know if this gasket's going to be salvageable or not. No. I don't think so. Well, alright, take that back. Somehow it didn't tear. If it had, I'd have replaced it in a heartbeat. Still say that needle's too high based on what I know about these saws. These carbs, I should say. So I'm going to set it down just a smidge. I didn't do much, but it should be enough. So let's test that needle now with nothing on it. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Now when you're doing this and you see what I just did? I released the pressure even when I was trying to be careful, and that's why I've got it aimed completely away from my face, because I don't want to take an eyeball full of gas. But I do like to assemble these damn things under pressure. Because you know right then and there if your inlet needle is too high, if a diaphragm's too stiff, you know, something like that. But it helps not to be a stumble bum like I did there. The real truth comes when you set this cover on. We got it. So that's part of why I've said before, if you work on these saws much at all, older saws, hell, newer ones for that matter, I'm sure, as long as you don't have fuel injection, you need to have one of these pressure test rigs. And there's a guy who sells them on eBay. It's a direct copy of this. This is a Homelite tool that I added new hose to. But I'm sure that there's other places to do, you know, a specific setup like this. But even just a regular vacuum pressure tester, you can adapt hose down to this. It's worth being able to put pressure on a carburetor. It just is. Because imagine I hadn't done that. Put it back together. What would it have done? Well, it would have started and it would have run, but it would have flooded out the minute I shut it off. It would have been like an old Mac 1010. Those things like to flood when they get warm and you shut them off. So it would have been a miserable pain in the neck to get restarted. You know, a cold start would have been okay. But you'd have never known that those gaskets were reversed, and at least you wouldn't have known to go into the carb and find that that had happened. All right. Normally, or at least most of the time, I don't see that separate from the gasket. They come adhered like this. That's the way Homelite sold them. So, it's no big deal, but what you want to do... Oh, let's put this we should put the 2 screws back in that hold that chamber plate in place. And if you don't have it clocked perfectly, as you're looking down, you'll see the screws don't line up. So you just reach down, move it a little bit with some sort of appropriate sized tool. And if it won't stay, move it with your finger until it will. Again, don't get medieval. It's the last thing you want to do. Alright. We're here. We're going to do it. Alright, a 360 wants 10.5 inches. And this will be somewhere to demonstrate the hose pulling technique. I swear I had a video up that showed that before, but I apparently wasn't smart enough to label it in a way that I can find it, so how the hell would you guys be able to find it? And out of those hundreds of videos, I am not going to sit down and go through every one. Okay. Go. Again, with stiff hose like this and gas in the tank, be careful not to flip yourself in the face with a fuel-covered fuel filter. I really hate what ethanol does to this stuff. So obnoxious. Alright. The fuel line pulling technique. Feed it through your tank. You want to pull in a direction that makes sense. And I'm not making sense right here. And I'll show you that in just a second. You want to pull so that with the minimal amount of pulling, you can see the hose and grab it with a pair of pliers. So in this case, it would make no sense for me to pull a hose from here into the tank, because I got to make that distance and hope it doesn't tear out. If I pull this direction, I got to go through that much. So plan ahead. Pierce the tip of the hose. About that far back. Take a piece of stiff wire that you can get to hold a shape. Slip it through the hole you just made and twist it so that you got everything lined up. I don't like to twist it, I just like to pull it shut. This will be an easy pull. I don't think I need oil on it, but I'll do it anyway. If it's going to be even remotely a tough pull, you should put a little lubrication on. And again, what does it hurt? So just do it. So, hopefully that stays lined up. See that coming through? Now it's a cold day. There. Now I didn't have trouble there. But if it was a tight pull, at this point you'd grab it. And away you go. Slip it out. Nip the end. Problem solved. So, now we gotta get our fuel filter on. That one shouldn't be too tough. But I'm gonna stretch the end of the hose just a little bit, so I don't have to monkey with it. And it goes right on. I forget to do that so many times. It's such an easy move, yet I'll sit there and fight with it. You guys have seen it. It's like, what the hell are you doing, dude? Don't be stupid. Work smarter, not harder. Alright, now why did you drop? Shit. There it went. Okay. Alright. Kind of scattered around here, but we'll get back to this. Line it up. Slip it into the boot, line it up. Try not to touch it again. Now you have to have this grommet on as you're putting the carburetor in. I said normally I don't have those things come off that easy. And normally they're stuck in place, which makes recentering your carb a hell of a lot easier. But since this one isn't, we'll do what we gotta do. So pull your throttle back, get it to start. Hose management is a thing. Oh man, there's so many jokes you could make right there too. Alright. Come on, baby. Nice. Rotate it down. Giving it a little choke rod there to help with the... Ah, shoot. You poo. Damn you anyhow. God, these things are a pain in the neck. When this metal comes loose, that sucks. Damn it. Okay. I'm having a hell of a time getting this to drop there. What's happening is the throttle was over the impulse nipple there, which is no bueno. I can see that I have that grommet too deep. That looks right. See if I can get her to start. Feels like a thread. Feels like another thread. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah. That's enough compression to seal everything up. Throttle test. Choke test. We're damn close, folks. I got a good feeling about this. Okay. You want that impulse hose to basically curve back. That way, it doesn't interfere with the throttle at all. Did I ever nip the end off of that? No. That would be a detail to not forget. And that gives a fresh sealing surface to the back there too. Alright, so I pulled more into the tank than I should have, but it's easier to pull it in that way than it is. It's easier to adjust this way. So what you want is a nice sweep with no kinks. And we have that. Alright, now I took this, again, when I told you I was going to take the starter off for a little cleanup, which went well. We need to put a new rope in that thing. Let's get this thing tilted a little bit. I want to show you guys that even for a rope replacement, you don't need to take that damn housing off. Really, the 360, you know, it originated as the 350, of course, in what, 1970, I want to say 73 or 4. I think it was 74. I have to go back and check. But it was pretty innovative for its time. So let's get this thing back on. And then we'll deal with the starter. You got two different size screws. The two shorter ones go there and there. The longer one goes down here. You don't want to mix that up. Okay. So now, let's actually service that thing. This is how you tension it too. So when you get to your second screw, hold on to that cover. Now an old crusted up mess like this, it's probably not going to go well, see how it's moving as I let up? So that's impressive. So you want to release all the tension. You can see there was at least 3 wraps of pre-tension, actually close to 4. Alright. Now if this was full of crap, you'd want to clean it up right now. It's not. You want to take that starter lock, put it back in there. It should hold in place in there. If it falls out like that one's doing, we might have to put a little dab of grease in there on reassembly so it's not a pain in the butt. Can't remember if there was supposed to be a retaining ring on that or not. That's bad. Not enough. Might be enough room. Alright, we know that rope's going to go bye-bye. So let's get it out of the way. That's either gotten wet and swollen, wet with any number of things. I didn't actually hose that housing out, and it was that way beforehand, so. But that's the point, you know, these ropes will swell over time and require some replacement. Alright, that's good. Now that's nice and loose. See that? You should have the bronze bushing in there. If it's nasty, clean it up. If it's not, you're good. You should have a spring washer of some sort, or at least a nylon wear plate. God, Homelite went back and forth. I would have expected the nylon wear plate on this one, I think, but amazing how much you forget when you don't do it all the time. Okay, so unwrap it. See how you can see a straight rope there. Knot is down in there. Yard that bad boy out. And that will take some effort. You could, of course, cut the rope shorter. Now see the difference in size? It's just swollen. So, my recollection is we want about 42 inches. And I'm always better to cut it long and fix it than to cut it short and have garbage. That's a small pulley, so odds are pretty good I'll have to trim some of this off, but it's okay. Oh, come on. Ah, son of a bitch. Of course, that's when a breeze would come up. I always like to burn the cut end even on the spool. We've got a storm coming in today, allegedly, and it has cooled way off. And we could use it. But of course that breeze would come up right then and there. Alright. So this is a pretty straightforward one. Feed it in, grab it, and get a loop out here, and then shove it down through the center. I mean, alternately, I suppose you could, you know, try and stuff it in from here and out. It doesn't really matter, as long as you achieve the same thing, which is getting enough rope to put a good knot in it. Which we have now done. I'm going to wind some of this up. And then we'll feed through. Come on, you. That eyelet is just a little tight with a little bit of melted rope end. There she goes. So make sure you catch your bushing, or spring plate in this case, and it'll drop into those pawls. So with it untensioned like this, it's actually pretty easy to work with. You don't have to worry about it zinging back in on you. So I say this design is not bad. Man, I want to hear this run. Hear it run right. Okay. Tuck all that in there as tight as possible so you don't have a weird bulge in your starter grip. Not that that's going to hurt anything, but the anal retentive part of me says, do it right. So actually, this will hold that in place, and it should drop. There it goes, it dropped in. And you rotate it clockwise to tension it. See how it started to pull? Alright. Where I was at was probably good, but I like a good positive action. Three turns is the max you should need. If you need any more than that to get a good positive action, figure out why. That's perfect. Alright, now the saw is not completely reassembled, but come back here. Go back to that starting point of where we should be able to hear this thing run and idle properly. Alright, get this angle right. I hope that works for you guys. That's not bad. Alright, take two. Wow. Well, that's what you want to have happen on a live video. I've never had that rope size rip through like that. Man, that pulled tight. Well, that's cute. I guess we need a double knot in there. Don't normally have to do that. Okay, so now it's tensioned. Hear that water in the muffler. Wow, that pulled good. I say I have never managed to rip rope through one of those. If you want a double knot, you sucker, you'll get one. Dare you to pull that through. That was probably a dumb thing to do, too. Oh well. I never professed to be a genius. Double knot doesn't fit under here all that well without a little persuasion. Okay. Try again. Hey. Well, I'd like to know how and what that damn linkage jammed on this time. I can see that it won't retract here. I'm getting sick of this. Real sick of it. God damn you. I've had it with this. It worked. What the hell is that hitting on? Doesn't look like it's... Oh. No, it's not that. What the hell is that hitting on? Man, I'm telling you, I'm about done with this. It's not... God. That at least wasn't an air leak this time, but damn it. What is wrong with this thing? I tell you, I'm done. I'm tired of this thing. I hate wasting video time on seemingly nothing. I don't know what the hell this could be doing. I sure don't want to have to take that stupid throttle grip off again, but damn it. There is nothing here to explain what's happening. Oh, God. All over again. You son of a bitch. Not in the mood for your garbage saw. Stupid thing. Come on. How many more times I can do this? Dipstick. Oh, God damn you, come on. I hate these grips. They're no fun. Now you tell me what the hell. Thanks. There is nothing to be hitting on. Unless... Oh. Did some piece of shit come loose in there? Oh, you dirty. That was a chunk of wood chip or something. Had to have been from when I hosed the damn thing out. What was it not? Something it wasn't letting it release. That's odd. That's really odd. Okay. Come on, Noodlehead, get in place. God, that's what it was. A piece of junk had jammed up under there. Boy, that's one I haven't seen before. But that had to have been from when I was washing it. Can't think of any other good explanation for that. Alright. See if we can get it to idle now. Okay. Boy, this is touchy. So this screwdriver's a little too wide to fit in the grommet. So that's why you'd see me spin it a couple times so that I could feel it index in. We're talking fraction of turns to make the difference between too lean and just right on this low speed. But I'm happy with that. It's idling, it's revving. Needs some run time, you know. That would be nice. Get it out, cut some wood. But I'm comfortable we've got the runnability issues taken care of here. I'll have to get it assembled a little more, do the tip tests outside of the vise, just to make sure we don't have a crank seal giving us any grief anywhere. But looking at the overall saw, I'm guessing we don't. So, things I want to still address. Obviously, the reassembly that we took apart. Check these caps, see if they need duckbill valves, like I think they do. It's really common for these older filters. This will clean up. Nothing wrong with that filter. Soap and water will take care of that. But when this grommet starts pulling out like that, you gotta take the time to put it back in. And when I reassemble this, if I can get it clean enough, I'll put a few dabs of super glue in place to try and hold it. If you leave it loose, it will not seal properly, and you're going to end up getting crap down the throat of your carburetor. I think... Oh, and this one, the clutch is shot. It hasn't started cutting through to the bearing yet, but it's awful close. So, get a new clutch on this, and that'll be easy. Again, you just stop everything up, get your clutch off. Remember, it's a reverse thread. Pull that off. Away it goes. So anyway, Curtis, I'm feeling pretty good about where this is at. I want to sit around a couple 3 days, give it another test fire, get all that other stuff replaced, but I think we're on the right track here.